Well, afternoon, everyone, and a massive welcome back from the new year, and all the very best to everyone joining today for the year that's coming. I hope 2024 is a successful year for everyone, both personally and professionally. First of all, just a massive thanks to those people who joined us on our first session around the evolution of data. It's great to see a number of you come back, and it's great to see those people join us for the first time today, as well as those rewatching us outside of the live session that we're holding today. This is the second in our series of LinkedIn Lives, and today we're going to focus on our own business and the business that I lead today, and talk about what we do with insights. And we've kind of entitled this session in an insights obsessed parking business. I'm kind of really proud of what we've done with the data that we capture and how we're using that to help transform both the perception of our industry, but also the use and management of car parks, and how we're supporting our clients to really start to understand and transform the customer journey. So yeah, sit back, relax. The next half an hour or so will be a little bit more about parking, and hopefully give you an indication about how we use data, as we covered in our last session, to really drive value both internally and with our clients. As we said through all of this series, please, feedback for us is the kind of most important part. Great to get the comments that we've had so far from the first session. I really appreciate the personal messages that I've had as well, and the support that we've seen across the kind of wider community. But please do keep that feedback coming through. We've got some really exciting sessions lined up as we're now into 2024, and I'm really excited to kind of announce the next session that we'll be doing, which I'll cover at the end of this session. But without further ado, let's take a bit of a dive into parking and how data and insights are helping transform that service. So if we all think about parking, I'm sure we all have a story to tell about our experiences with parking and some of the issues and challenges that we've faced historically. The inability to find a space. Maybe some of us have received one of those dreaded PCNs in the past. And also just how disconnected parking has been to the wider experience that you're looking to have. For us, and for too long, parking has been overlooked. You know, we see every car journey starts and ends with a parking event. And what we're really driving forward for now, and something I'm very passionate about and talk very regularly with our clients, is how we extend that understanding and that experience of our customers to their arrival at the parking facility. And how do we make sure that they have the best service possible when arriving at a location from the moment they enter that car park. For us, parking takes many forms. That takes forms of parking in retail, at commercial properties, parking at your office. But in a large part of what we do, it's that areas of parking which are reserved specifically for people who have a right to park there. That's the service we do, providing protection around accessible bays, around parent and child bays, around social housing facilities where you need to have a permit or be a resident to park and utilize that facility. And what we've built is a set of insights and a set of reports which allow us to really understand how the use of that car park is being managed. For a large number of our publicly invited car parks, so your normal pay and display car parks, our data is helping us understand how well those car parks are utilized and how we can start to drive more value of those assets for our landowners and our property managers. And we'll cover today that evolution we talked about in the last session, from capturing data and turning that into actionable insights. What I would say is, parking covers so much more than you think. And if we just pause for a minute to think about some of the challenges and factors that we face within the parking market. Every year we see a growth in the number of vehicles being registered. We see a growth in the number of vehicles on our streets and on our roads. And a recent study from the Department of Transport shows that 96% of the time, vehicles are stationary and parked. So 96% of the time, those vehicles are parked. and we see growing pressures on the parking facilities that are available. We're seeing car parks being redeveloped for other purposes, and we're seeing a reduction in the availability of parking being provided on new developments. What we've also seen since COVID and since lockdown is a significant change in the way that people work. We've seen a massive shift, as we all know, towards hybrid working. And that's changed massively the demand and the challenge we have for parking, both at home, both at work, and both in our retail and hospitality destinations that we all love to use. So parking assets are increasingly under more and more pressure as time goes on. And if we glimpse a little bit further into the future and think about some of the challenges we face today, we're seeing a significant rise in the number of electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. We see increasing demand across our entire portfolio of car parks for charging of those electric and hybrid vehicles. And looking a little bit further beyond that, you move into the world of autonomous vehicles, you move into the world of car sharing becoming more prevalent. And we see a real challenge building of how these parking assets are managed over time and how we can use data and insights to allow us to understand how those demands are building. So let's talk a little bit more about how we use data, how we enrich data, and then how that data is turned into insights to work with our clients and work across our portfolio of sites to drive as much value as we can. So in a number of our car parks, we will deploy technology which allows us to read the number plates of a vehicle. So everything that we do in that situation will start with a vehicle registration number. And what I find absolutely incredible is how much we can now enrich that data to allow us to understand much more about this car park and its usage. And what I'll show you shortly is just a sample of the types of reports that we use on a regular basis with our clients to help them understand the use of their car park and their data. So if I just bring up on screen now one of our standard site analysis report that we would use with a client. And what this report shows for us is an understanding of the use of this car park. And what I really want to do through this session is really articulate and hopefully explain how those elements of data we find in our business in various sectors can really start to transform when you start to enrich and look at that data slightly differently. So what you can see on screen here today is an analysis of occupancy of this car park. So what percentage of that car park, those available spaces, were in use by hour of day and by day of week. And this becomes really useful to understand how your facility is being managed and utilized across the board. It allows us to compare traffic volumes and car volumes to the previous month and how that's changed since last year. And particularly important at the top is this growing percentage of the number of electric vehicles that are entering and using these assets. And that's a really important factor that we'll come back to later. If we move a little bit deeper into the data now, you can now start to see across the top of the graphic the total number of events that we have captured, total number of vehicles within our car parks. And we can see now how those number of visits are differing quite dramatically throughout the year. So this allows us to start to think about demand planning. It allows us to start thinking about, in some of the facilities, the seasonal impacts on these car parks and the distribution that we see from people between weekdays and weekends, between daytime and evening time. What it also shows on the graphic on the top right is how those vehicles arrive by time of day. And you can see in this example, we see significant pressure on this parking facility at around 8 o'clock in the morning, where we have a huge amount of our traffic arriving at that same time. Part of what we use this data for is to say what's driving that demand. Is that the start of a shift pattern in a healthcare setting? Is there something we can do to redistribute the arrival of those people and to flatten this peak to reduce the demand that we have? In a number of our scenarios, what we're looking to manage is the impact that this might have onto a public highway. If we have a huge demand to enter a car park, typically will create traffic and congestion at the entry to these facilities. And our role in using our insights is to try and redistribute that as much as we can and to lessen the impact outside of the parking facility. As you can see, also is looking at the demand during the week. And in scenarios such as health and education, this is where we talk to landowners about how can we better utilise these parking assets outside of the time where they're actually required for their main purpose. So this is where we'd look at optimising revenue opportunity for landowners. We'd use our insights to show that we have huge amounts of available spaces not being used for their main purpose. So we can now repurpose that space during that time of day to drive additional revenue and drive additional income for those landowners and make most use of these assets. So as we turn to our next piece of insights, this is now really looking at how people are using our locations and how the difference between those people who might be staff at a location to those people who might be visiting customers. So if we think about this being a retail environment where we have members of staff who are working within the retail outlets and then customers who are coming to purchase goods at those retail settings, what this reports and this insight allows us to understand is how long are those customers staying on site? What is the dwell time of our customers? And in a retail environment, that's so important to understand how long people are staying on site. That can have real value in terms of rentable values of property, can have real value in terms of how we drive more occupancy at those retail sites. And our insights and our data have started to really allow us to better understand the behavior and the use of those sites. And you can see here, we're very simply just looking at the distribution of the duration of those people who are staying within the facility. And that allows us to understand and manage why that customer behavior and that customer experience is changing over time. One of the other areas that we can fully enrich our data is from the vehicle registration of every vehicle. We're now able to understand what the emissions of that vehicle is. We're able to understand when that vehicle was first registered and therefore understand the age profile of the vehicles within our car parks. And as mentioned earlier, critically importantly, we can now also understand the fuel type of these vehicles, how many of these vehicles are electric moving forward. And what this graphic shows is that proportion of electric vehicles and start to understand the distribution by manufacturer. This has been quite interesting, a number of conversations where we've spoke to local car dealerships about maybe implementing pop-up stands within retail parks where they're looking to increase the engagement with people driving their current manufactured vehicle. And using the age profile of our vehicles to say, well, how could we potentially support those people who are most likely now to be looking at changing their vehicle over time? And this data has been incredibly important for us in a number of those conversations and just really shows through the capture of a vehicle number plate just how much you can enrich that data to create now some actionable data insights. Just stepping that on slightly further, it allows us to also understand the emissions of those vehicles. And what's been particularly important for us as part of our ESG strategy internally with our business and in our engagement with our clients is what are the actions we can take to reduce the pollution from vehicles? How do we create cleaner environments in heavily populated areas to lessen the health impacts that we see so dramatically affect people in inner city locations? And for us, this data has become really important to say, how do we start to manage both high polluting vehicles and electric vehicles? And how do we want to encourage or discourage people to use our parking facilities in those heavily populated areas? As I mentioned before, this also allows us to understand the growth of electric vehicles over time. And for some of our clients, we've now actually used this data to further enrich information around what's the carbon impact of operating a car park, and actually calculating the amount of CO2 being generated by providing a parking facility over time, and how through a number of decisions that we've taken through our insights can we start to affect and reduce that carbon footprint. For those who tuned into our first session, you'll recall me talking quite a lot about actionable insights. And this, I'm hoping, gives you a real example of how we manage that in our setting from a parking management perspective, and how we work with our clients to improve that over time. And the final point for me would be around how we manage the increasing and ongoing demand of electric vehicles across a whole range of parking facilities. Within the graphics here, you can see the rise that we're seeing in electric vehicles. And in this one particular facility, in the last year alone, we've seen a 100% increase in the number of electric vehicles using this facility. And we can also then understand when those vehicles are arriving in our car parks. So we understand by hour, by day, by week, the demand that's changing for electric charging points. And this data has been invaluable to a number of our clients in understanding when to act from an electric charging perspective and how to manage the growing demand over time. And all of that data together, as I say, starts with the simple capture of a vehicle registration number from someone entering a car park. And I'm hoping this gives you an example of how that's really helped drive and enrich that data to provide a number of those insights we've spoke about earlier. So I'm hoping that gives you a real insight into how data is being used within a parking management context, and maybe gives you some areas to think about how you could use similar data on important aspects of information within your own business. What I would say, and what I said in the first session, is to think big, to think about how your data that you capture can be enriched to tell a much broader story than just your data alone. And hopefully we've showed examples there of where we brought data in from other sources to understand emissions of vehicles, the fuel type of vehicles, to start to really understand some of those more behavioral characteristics that we've seen around our car parks. Reflecting on some of the points I mentioned earlier, and also drawing from some of the points in the first sessions, this has been a real journey for us as a team. This takes time to build and evolve. We have to adapt and change as we implement some of these changes across the board. But we've ended up with a product that we're now incredibly proud of. A product that has changed our conversation internally, has changed how we look at our business and the value that we can bring to our clients. But most importantly, puts us much closer with our clients now when talking to them and when meeting with them. You know, we feel we can truly now influence their customers' journey and the experience that they're trying to provide to the customers who are using their facilities. What we've talked about today, we use extensively across the retail sector, hospitality, education, health, and housing. And increasingly, we see more and more demand for deeper and greater insights into the use of our parking assets. For me, parking is all about extending that customer journey, capturing that person at the point of arrival, and making sure we're fully understanding their use of our entire facilities. And for our clients who own car parks and are using those as commercial enterprises, is to make sure we're driving and supporting them in delivering as much value as we possibly can. For us, it's important we understand what the driver is. So in our hospital environment, we're very focused on making available parking for our visitors, for people to attend outpatient appointments on time, to not cause further knock-on impacts into an already very difficult and stressful environment. And an active parking management solution with great actionable data insights can really help us tailor and transform that service to our sectors. But none of that's without challenge. None of that is easy to do. And the internal support and the process we've taken on boarding everybody has been critical to that success. I talked in the first episode about building a data culture, And that's so important as you start your journey. So important to be able to extend the data that you're capturing to the objectives of your organization, to the service you deliver to your clients. And I still feel we have lots of work in front of us. We still have plenty of opportunities to develop further. We still have lots of insights we're yet to explore and discover. But the start we've made has really helped change the way we interact with our clients. And it's really started to show the value of connecting the work that our team do to the service that we deliver, to the transformation it can deliver to our clients. So I'm hoping today that gives you a small glimpse in how we're using data, how we're building our insights, and how we're thinking big about the differences that we can make, and how that's really started to transform the conversation with our clients about the service that we can provide. What's been particularly interesting over the last 18 months of our development of these products, we now have a number of clients who just engage with us for our insights. They take no other service from us in terms of our paid parking facilities, in terms of our parking management solutions. They are just wanting to understand the data. They're looking for that information, that insights around their facilities to make better decisions. And it's been great to work with local authorities, with retailers, and with some really other interesting environments where we can now just provide a data service. And for me, that's a true demonstration of the journey that we've come on, where we can now support our clients directly with actionable insights that make a real difference. So thanks for your time today. It's been really great to share a little bit more about the business that we operate and how we're using data and insights. I'm hoping that's maybe caused a couple of questions in your own mind about how data in your business could help transform your service. I'd be absolutely delighted to engage in conversation and comments with individuals who maybe have thoughts about how they can develop similar strategies, but not quite sure how to start. As always, your feedback and your input to these sessions is really important for us as we start this journey. We've got some really exciting sessions planned coming up. And I'd really love you to join me on as many of those sessions as you possibly can. But please, if you can drop your comments below, if you can share this content within your community and your network, that'd be greatly appreciated from a personal perspective. So moving on to our next session, which will be in 2 weeks' time, we'll be looking at how we can use insights to drive operational excellence and drive operational performance, and how we really engage operationally in the use and the delivery of insights to empower people, to motivate people, and to transform service. And I'll be joined by two really special guests, two people I work with very closely within our own business, who've delivered such a dramatic change in the way that we use data and insights going forward. And we'll be announcing those guests shortly, but really look forward to a more conversational style of session in our next one planned in 2 weeks' time. So thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Thanks to those people who've taken the time to rewatch this outside of the live sessions. Please continue to follow us, share within your networks, and drop your comments below. And we will see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks again.